Jessica, how did you find carnivore?
So, when my daughter was first born, she was diagnosed with a rare and fatal genetic disease called MMIHS. Um, and they saw that she had an enlarged bladder. They saw that her on imaging that her intestines were malformed. So when they put those two things together, that's a specific genetic mutation. Um, Aside from MMIHS, it's called an ACTG2 genetic mutation, and that can cause all sorts of crazy complications. So they told us that her life expectancy would be quite short. Some kids don't even make it out of pregnancy. And then some kids only live, a year or a couple years. Most of them are supported by TPN, which is IV nutrition, their whole life until their liver gives out from the toxicity of the TPN or from medications. The other route is transplant, which is almost impossible to get right with the bowel, and very high rates of rejection and high rates of cancer after transplant because you have to take those immunosuppressants to keep your organ that you received. And many children end up getting multiple organs transplanted, up to five. So, five different organs going in at once. The survival rate is low, and it's just not a great outcome. So, my husband and I were Christians. We prayed a lot, and we just continued to search for answers for her. So, after she was born, she did great breastfeeding. And we thought, she's fine. She must have one of these cases that's just not as bad. And then once we started solids with her, which we started healthy in terms of, standard American, uh, she was eating chicken and blueberries and broccoli and carrots. And her stomach blew up like a balloon. She looked like she was like a tight, hard, vascular stomach all the time. Shiny, even. Her skin was shiny because it was so stretched. Some of these kids actually get stretch marks from the distension, and they're only, very small. So we started solids around 12 months, and by 16 months, so only 4 months later, she was in emergency surgery to have an ileostomy placed. And because these children have really weak intestines and slow intestinal motility, the intestines tend to prolapse. So when you have that ileostomy, now you have an opening in the stomach, the intestines will come through that and just fall out of the stomach. So that's what started happening to her. And, here's my beautiful 2-year-old little girl, and she was this chunky, healthy baby. And all of a sudden, we're in this situation where she's having surgery after surgery. Her intestines are just falling out of her stomach all the time. We're at home 3 hours away from the hospital where she's seen. And every single surgery, she's getting more weak. She's losing weight. She's getting pale. She's withdrawing emotionally. Uh, she stops playing. She stops smiling. She stops interacting with us. She's in pain all the time. It's becoming more difficult for her to walk because her distension's so bad and she's weak from all of the surgeries. So she had multiple central line placement surgeries because the lines kept failing. They were putting them in her arms. And that's another reason why some of these kids pass away, because they run out of ports for them. So they'll run out of accessible veins for the TPN to go into. So we were having these line placement surgeries. At one point in November of 2021, she had a surgery every week for a month. Every single week. And at that time, my 3-year-old, he's now 3, was in the NICU. I had him early because I was under so much stress. So he was in one NICU, and she was having back-to-back emergency surgeries in another hospital 3 hours away.
And she was 2 years old at this time?
She was 2.
Hmm.
She had just turned 2. And then in March of 2022, she was, about 2.5. That's when she had one really absolutely brutal surgery because she had such an extreme ileostomy prolapse. And when her intestine came out, she screamed, and she just bared down and screamed for a long time because it was painful, and it turned purple and it was dying. So that was an emergency surgery. But the way that the surgeon described it, I'll save your viewers the gore of it. It was absolutely horrible, and like still thinking of how he had to get her intestine back in and what he described to me is so just horrific. And her whole abdomen was covered in bruising from that surgery, and that was it. She completely shut down at that point. And this is when I found a GAPS practitioner. Now the GAPS diet is not necessarily carnivore. So I found a GAPS practitioner. I called her, I told her the situation, and I think she was afraid to tell us her real thoughts. So she told us, why don't we try the GAPS diet? And I said, well, this has onion, garlic, things I know she can't have because they're highly fermentable and they'll cause a lot of gas, and what's called a pseudo-obstruction, which is where the gas blows up the intestines are too weak, and it's like a real obstruction of the bowel. So you have intestinal contents coming back up and out of your mouth. It's really bad, and it was happening to her constantly before. So I said, I don't think we can do that. She doesn't tend to tolerate a lot of vegetables. So we ended up trying the GAPS diet with a little bit of spinach, a little bit of carrots, and we were still having some distension. She said, okay, why don't we try the no plant GAPS diet? And like, we were willing to try anything. We were just searching for answers for her. We were, it was the 11th hour and we didn't have a lot of time to figure it out. So we tried the no plant GAPS diet, and we started making it into G-tube feeds for her because she wasn't really eating by mouth a lot, and she had a G-tube. So we started making these big pots of chicken with organ meats, and we were buying chickens from the Amish country to make sure they were clean and like properly sourced for her. And when we started feeding her this food, she got better so fast. It was like a miracle before our eyes, watching her. Every single day she looked better than the last. She put on 10 pounds in 2 months. So she was 26 pounds. She was this little, tiny, frail, huge distended tummy, barely any hair on her head. Her hair wasn't growing right because she wasn't growing right. And at the end of those 2 months, like, you can literally see a difference in her hair in her pictures because it got thick in 2 months, and it was short, but it had started to grow in properly, and her distension went down, and her little skinny, tiny limbs got thick, and she was chubby even. Like, she was a chubby little, not even 3 years old, and she was 36 pounds. She was big. She's always been pretty tall for her age, so once she grew into it, I mean, she was just this adorable little girl that you could just fawn over all day. Curly blonde hair, blue eyes, and just chubby and adorable. So after that, she really thrived for a couple of months, and we knew that it was the solution for sure. And unfortunately, we had a family party a couple months later, and she picked up some crackers off the floor and ate them. And that led to 4 emergency surgeries because it created gas in her intestines, and her intestines twisted shut, which is a volvulus, which is life-threatening. So she spent the rest of that summer in the hospital. But I knew, even though we had that huge setback, and thank God they figured it out quickly, they got her to surgery, they untwisted it. It left her with scar tissue all throughout her abdomen, which we're still dealing with today. However, they saved her life, they untwisted the bowel, and I knew we were going to be able to get her back to where she was because I had seen her heal once. I knew we could do it again if we could get her home and safe and get her intestines working again. And we did just that. After the second round, we had a little bit of a struggle because she had to go back on TPN, which is very high in sugar. So trying to come off of that after a couple months back on, after being in ketosis for a period, her pancreas was not having it, and she was just overproducing so much insulin from being on that TPN. So once we came off, her sugar was dropping. She would play for an hour and it would drop to 55. And I couldn't give her sugar through her stomach. So I would have to hook her up to IV fluids that contain sugar to bring it up. Or we would have to give her, I would give her boluses of just butter. I would just warm up butter and put it in her G tube just to give her some fat to bring her sugar up. And then this was really interesting. So part of the protocol is fermented dairy. So she got sick with rotavirus, ended up in the hospital, and I hadn't done the fermented dairy part of the protocol yet because I was really nervous. It can cause a lot of die-off, especially in people that have a lot of candida, which obviously she was loaded with yeast to have that much fermentation in the bowel. So we put her on the fermented dairy when she had rotavirus, and all of the blood sugar issues went away immediately and never came back. So that was it. And she's been thriving ever since. She's had her central line out since June of 2023. So this is her third full summer going swimming and taking baths. And it sounds crazy, but like she wasn't able to take baths. I had to sponge bathe her on the couch and wash her hair in a bin. And she wasn't allowed to get wet. She couldn't go in a sprinkler. She couldn't go to the water park. She couldn't go to the pool with her friends. We had a boat, and we would go out on the boat in the summer, and we couldn't bring her in the water with us. We had to bring like a little tub for her to put her feet in to stay cool. It was really a huge, it just changed our entire lives. And her life now is normal.
That's that's astounding. So it's as a parent, it's easy to understand like how just being able to do something that every other child does normally is such a big thing now, right? Like you say, being able to take a bath or something, it's like everyone takes a bath, but it's just a normal thing. But to be able to do that when you haven't been able to before is just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I haven't said this yet, but I think it's important to say. I think that every medically complex child should be on this diet. I genuinely believe that. And I work with so many families now who have found me because of my daughter's story, because of interviews like this. So thank you. Who have seen me online and reached out, and I've started working with them through this exact protocol, the no plant gaps diet. So it was created by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. I got certified this year after using it for so long so that I could work professionally as a GAPS coach. So I've been working with these families, and these kids get better so quickly, just like my daughter did. And I think if you're a parent of a medically complex child and you haven't tried this, you haven't tried everything.
Yeah. So, I have heard people talk about the GAPS diet before, but it's never in terms of the no plant GAPS diet. So, I mean, what does that look like? Is that basically carnivore with fermented foods?
Yeah, so it's a very specific protocol depending on the sensitivities of that particular person. So it can be adjusted a lot. So like for my daughter, we tried to give her beef liver right off the bat, and because she was so malnourished, she started having massive amounts of diarrhea because it was just rebuilding her body too quickly. She couldn't handle, like, people don't realize how healing these foods are and how much they change your body chemistry so quickly. So you have to really take it easy. And I tell this to all of the medically complex families that I work with. So we started with chicken because the protocol says to start with chicken if you can't tolerate beef or lamb. And the red meat is very cleansing, very building. So for these kids who have been so malnourished their entire lives, they have to start a little more slowly. So that's what this protocol walks you through, is exactly where to start based on where you're at. And it's just adjustments within the carnivore realm, but there's no raw milk, no raw cream. Every bit of dairy is fermented for at least 24 hours, so it's 100% lactose free, and it won't ferment in the bowel. And it creates this incredibly strong probiotic that I think a lot of people are missing in the carnivore diet, because if you drink a quart of kefir a day, you will never have a sugar craving again in your life. I mean, it is such a powerful probiotic, and it crowds out all of the pathogens that are in your gut very quickly. It's also really helpful for chronic fatigue. So when she was having those issues with blood sugar, it corrects the blood sugar without spiking your insulin.
Wow. Um, so how old is she now?
She just turned 6 on Saturday.
Wow. Wow. So and like she's uh going to school, preschool, just like normal or
She's starting first grade. I do homeschool
right.
her. I'm planning on homeschooling all of our kids. That was pretty much like ideologically, that was kind of what we were going for. We're Christians, and I'm I'm a little protective over her because of everything she's been through as well. So, and if she goes to school, because she does still have an ileostomy, she would have to go with a dedicated nurse just for her. I didn't want her to go through that. So we're part of a very supportive and loving homeschool community. So she has plenty of socialization and friends. And she's a very social, fun loving kid who wants to be outside all the time. So it just was a perfect fit for us.
So that's interesting because you imagine when a child is suffering like that from birth, basically, that's very isolating as well. So the fact she's very, very social is a very positive thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's a lot of the kids, once they get on carnivore, it's funny. A lot of the families I work with, they will tell me, my son has been so much more social, has so much energy. One little boy in particular, his mom used to receive pictures of him on the playground laying down. He would just be laying on the ground. He was exhausted. He didn't have the energy to run and play. He felt terrible all the time. And she's like, now all the picture I get of him, she's like, I can't even get him inside the house to take a break because he just has so much energy. So it it's not only it is who she is. She's a very social kid. But when she was in on the TPN and malnourished, there was no socialization whatsoever. So I think a lot of that is not just, we assume it's part of their personality, but it's really because they're malnourished. And same with adults. I'm a lot more social when I'm doing carnivore myself.
Right. Yeah, it's you give people the right nutrition and their real personality shines.
Yeah, they're not being weighed down by all of these physical, mental, emotional symptoms that come along with eating processed food, or just the food that's not right for our bodies. Because, you can go and say, well, fruit is biologically normal to eat. If my daughter eats fruit, that would be the end of her life, literally. So when I spoke to Dr. Chafee, he said, what's best for the most sensitive of us is what's best for everyone. And that really resonated with me and stuck with me. Like, what is best for this little girl who has the worst symptoms you can possibly imagine? That's what's best for every single one of us.
Yeah. Um, wow. So how have her doctors reacted to the changes in her?
They were so I just actually had a call with the head of GI at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, last week, and her words were that they almost kicked us out of the hospital because they thought I was insane. So that's where we started. I was the crazy mom that would not take no for an answer. I was going to try this diet with her. I was not going to put her on artificial G tube feeds, and I would not take no for an answer. And I fought tooth and nail like a bulldog to get to where I needed to get permission to try this. So they all thought I was insane. And now that she's thriving, they are writing a case series on her and the other kids that I have been working with because they're all doing so well. They're talking about creating an international registry for the kids that are doing this diet with this diagnosis so that the information is available globally to the doctors since it's such a rare disease, and changing the recommendations for the protocol to this diet. So the international protocol essentially is going to change because of my daughter.
Wow. That's a very positive outcome.
I would say so.
Wow.
The doctors still don't like me very much, but I'm okay.
You get some side eye from some of them. It's like, oh no, here she
Oh
comes
yeah,
again.
I'm not their favorite person, that's for sure. But you know what? I mean, even this doctor who I spoke to last week, she said it took her, from her perspective, she said it took me a really long time to accept that the results you were getting were real and that they were going to last. So it's been 3 years now. You can't deny the results. She hasn't had blood work since April of 2022, and she's been fine. She was getting weekly blood work her whole life before that. So, and she was in life flighted once because her blood work was so bad. So you can't deny, you can't argue with results. And she said it took her a really long time to accept. Her paradigm internally had to shift because she was indoctrinated to treat these cases with TPN and transplant and medication. And she said that, she admitted it. So I think her being humble enough to say that really was validating for me. But also, she's a Christian, and working with a doctor who has the same beliefs as you is really helpful because I know we're on the same team and we want what's best for the kids. It's not about who's right, it's about what's right. And it's about making sure that kids with this diagnosis get the help they need as soon as possible to save them the absolute crazy suffering that my daughter went through, and hopefully give them a long lifespan.
It does say a lot that she was able to come around because most people just hold on to that belief so strongly, what they've been taught, what they've practiced their entire lives. That's a hurdle that's way too big for most people, right?
Yeah, she's the only doctor I have spoken to from that hospital that has cared at all. But I also force her to care because I've been harassing her for 3 years, telling her that they need to do something because, but now she has patients coming to her from me who I have worked with, and she already knew them. They found me online, started working with me. They go back in and she's like, "What have you been doing?" This one little boy gained 17 pounds. She goes, "He's my healthiest patient. What are you doing?" We were, doing the no plant gaps diet. And so she sees the results not only from my daughter now, but from these other children. And there are quite a few of them across the globe now.
That's fantastic. That's such a good result. And of course, like for you now, this is probably like this is mission number one.
Absolutely. I will not stop until this is published, done, you know, in a medical journal. I really think that not only with this diagnosis, but for people with chronic intestinal pseudoobstruction, which can happen outside of a genetic diagnosis, uh, people with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. My daughter had that, as bad a case you can possibly imagine. And I have parents coming to me whose kids have that. Every single one of them gets better. And if we can take a diet first approach for all of these children, we can avoid so much suffering, so many medications that have really bad side effects, transplants that are happening because these medications are ruining their livers and kidneys. Like, this is my absolute mission for the rest of my life, because these kids need help, these families need help, they don't know where to start, and this is where they need to start. And the no plant gaps diet really is the perfect version of the carnivore diet for medically complex kids, because they're so malnourished. So when you add in the organ meats and the fermented dairy and the broth, they're really getting everything that they need, that they've been missing all of this time.
So, has this changed the way your family eats generally?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My husband and I, we weren't bad. So like, my husband had done carnivore before I even met him. He's a bodybuilder, and he is probably the most disciplined human being I have ever met in my life. He's incredible. So when all of this started happening, we were eating pretty much standard American, but not terrible. We had gone to another doctor who changed our diet. We both lost a bunch of weight. We were feeling good, but we were eating kind of paleo, not a lot of fat. So I wasn't feeling great because I had no energy. I was on low carb, low fat. I lost so much weight and I was exhausted. So we both started doing this after she was on it for about a year. But we recently moved and we have been off our game, and I have been so inflamed and miserable. So I told my husband, Saturday is our first day back on strict carnivore as a family, because it's just the best way for us all to function optimally. I have my own autoimmune problems. My husband, he could eat whatever he wants forever and be like probably pretty healthy, but the best thing for him as well is carnivore. And we have done it, seen the results, and felt amazing.
So you've found this, and it just, most people when they find carnivore, they they have this realization that, okay, well, I was lied to, and all the marketing that's out there, every TV commercial I've ever watched is basically maybe not directly lying, but they're muddying the waters enough that I believe that Fruit Loops are healthier than meat or something,
Yeah,
but it feels like all these things are falling into place. Um, but that just must be amplified so much that this has happened to you for your daughter.
yeah. I think that when it comes to your kids, what won't you do for your child? And when you look for answers prayerfully and with an open heart, nothing sounds crazy. And I when I first worked with that other mom whose little boy has done incredibly well, uh, she was like, "I thought you were insane when you told me to feed my 8-year-old only meat." But she did it. She took the leap of faith, and now nothing sounds crazy to me. Now that now that we've been doing this for so long, you can't be surprised. But I think that so many things can be put into remission with this diet, and so many parents are searching for answers and taking their kids to every specialist. I just spoke to a mom the other day who, her daughter is 16 and she's got really bad SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. She was on antibiotics for a year straight, every day. The damage that has been done to this girl's body is, I'm not going to say irreversible because I don't think it is, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of hard work to fix. And I don't know whether these doctors are well meaning or not. Some of them I don't think are, but some of them are. And they are pulling from the toolbox which they have. So if you keep going back to the medical establishment and saying, give me something different, which is what we kept doing, they don't have anything else to offer you. They can give you surgery, antibiotics, drugs, and transplants. That's about it. So if you want something different, people need to realize that your health, your child's health, even if your child is chronically ill, and this is something that really bothers me, parents of medically complex children will say, yeah, that worked for your daughter, but it wouldn't work for mine. My daughter was diagnosed with intestinal failure. They told us that her intestines did not work at all. So while it may not cure your child, if you want to get them to their optimal health, this is the way to do it. This is the way for them to live optimally for their body, every single one of them.
It's really testimony to how good the body is at healing, provided you're giving it the right nutrition, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it happens so quickly, so
Mm.
quickly. I met with a family last week, last Tuesday. Today is Wednesday, so 8 days ago. And I got a message from the mom today with a picture of her daughter. She already has color in her cheeks. She already has red in her lips. She's already gained a pound. She went to see the doctor today, and the doctor said, she looks different. She looks great. What are you doing? And they haven't even switched over entirely yet. She's still on TPN and her processed YouTube feeds. All they've done is started adding in a little bit of broth, and it changed her appearance. It's very quick.
Mhm. That's it's so nice to hear you can have this such a big impact. You know, you mentioned that the doctors can only do antibiotics, drugs, this kind of thing, and then their toolbox is empty.
Yeah.
Um, and for a parent with a sick child, that's horrible because once all the avenues of hope have closed off, what are you going to do? You know, you're just going to keep going back to your doctor every week saying, what else is there? What else is there? Nothing, nothing. You know, the best we can do is, you know, keep them at this point. So
Mhm.
when you can offer people, well, there is hope. That's a massive thing.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's such a blessing. I'm really grateful that God has chosen to use me in this way. And when I was going through it with my daughter, I felt like maybe God was punishing me for not being a perfect person in my life and for being a sinner. And I realized that this was all part of his plan because he knew that I wasn't going to give up. And he knew that we would find a solution for our little girl and my husband too. I mean, I can't take the credit here. My husband is incredible. And he, from the beginning, was in the kitchen with me, skinning chicken heads to blend up in the blender and taking skin off of beef tongues. And he still does, he is uh, just a rock star. So God had a plan with my daughter, knowing that she would heal and that we would push forward to help these other families and make it our mission.
So, how can people find out more about you and this movement?
I wrote a book on my daughter's journey. It's called Dying to Thriving by Jessica Roman on Amazon. So that details everything that she went through. And then my website is chealthcollective.org. So I do see clients privately, and if you know, there's a lot of interest in this case series. So I've been in contact with a lot of doctors. If any doctors want to reach out because they're interested in the case series, I would love to talk and connect them with the other doctors that are working on it. But yeah, I'm here. People send me DMs on Instagram and TikTok, and I try to help wherever I can, however I can, because I know I have been in that position where you're just desperate looking for answers, and this is what God put me on earth to do.
Jessica, thank you so much. I'll link to your book and also to the website in the show notes. Um, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your and your daughter's story, your family's story, and I'm so happy to hear she's doing really well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.